I mean, To Kill a Mockingbird comes to mind. I read a lot of books. My senior year, I was left Trinity and I was at the seminary. And it turned out that I only had 16 class periods because I had already covered everything at Trinity. So I ended up with 30-some, what would have been class hours, to just sit in an empty room of 100 desks, because nobody else was having study hall at that time, and read. So I just read all kinds of novels, American literature, and all kinds of things that had a deep impact in some ways. I mean, picking out what they were, I don't know. I remember, I know Kill a Mockingbird, The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. I've got quotes from, really short, there's a very short book, John, what's his name?
Not Black Like Me.
I read Black Like Me, yeah, that was quite telling, yes. Black Like Me.
Richard Wright, any Richard Wright?
I read,
Invisible
yes.
Man, Native Son.
Yes, yes. And the poems of,
Baldwin? No.
well, Baldwin's books, you know, it's funny,
Profound.
they were powerful, but what's interesting is I've reread a couple recently, and to see, the sadness is, for me, is that he's as relevant today
Prescient.
as ever. And then that movie that came out last year, I'm Not Your Negro, I don't know if you got to see
Yes,
that. I got
documentary.
to see that. Well, I got to see that 3 times, and every time I got something else out of it.
The Baldwin documentary.
Yeah.
I Am Not Your
Just
Negro.
unbelievable. And I'd forgotten how good he was, you know. And yeah, that was certainly powerful. I'm trying to think of who's the man that wrote
John
Deep
Killens.
Inside Me as a Dreaming Child is one of his quotes.
Not John Killens.
No, he's one of the Renaissance, Harlem Renaissance folks.
Let me see.
Famous. Anyway, that's the,
Claude McKay,
No,
they were just...
yeah. Well, I'm not going to think
Yeah,
of it.
but I was just thinking about the books that influenced.
Yeah.
You were seeing stuff and then reading stuff, and it was like all making sense. And now I hear you saying, in retrospect, even you could see it even clearer.
Oh yeah, it's. I mean, seeing some of the stuff now, and sensing that, in some ways, there hasn't been that much change. There was a piece on today that reminded me of. They were talking about the anniversary of, about the '54.
Oh,
Brown.
the young lady who died.
Yeah,
yes.
she died. So they were saying they were interviewing a man who's the head of the African American Studies at some university, and he was saying, like, you know, we are more segregated now than we were then, because he said we're segregated because that's kind of based on where you live, and where you live is based on what you earn, and what you earn is based on whether or not you can get an education, and it just becomes this vicious cycle. And he says, you can pass all the laws you want, but you're never going to correct for all this. He says that's got to come from people and changing their attitudes, and you can stop them from hurting you in some ways, but you can't make them not hurt you, you know, in other ways. And so I thought that was, and that is, I think that's where we are, and we've got leaders right now that call out the worst in people and do so intentionally. That's the thing, they do so intentionally.
And you're talking about Brown versus Board of Education, the 1954 decision. The young lady who was at the center of that decision passed away at 76.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she was a little girl when this started, and that was an amalgam of a lot of cases that brought Thurgood Marshall to the fore.
I'll tell you some books that are good, though, that are moving, is Taylor Branch's
Parting
2
the
volumes. I
Waters.
just gave my set to Spalding. They're starting some kind of a
Parting
African
the
American
Waters?
Studies. Huh?
Is that Parting the Waters?
Parting the Waters, and I forget the name of the second one, but it's those are both just
Seminal.
to read those. And then the 4-volume one soon, I guess, I hope soon, before I die anyway, the 5th volume of Robert Caro's LBJ thing. Those, to read this history of this period is just fascinating. It's so well done, and how he got that civil rights bill passed, and it was amazing. He didn't get it passed.
Does it ever amaze
Martin
you
Luther King got
to think about that Dr. King was just 39 years old
I know.
when he was assassinated?
Yeah, and then the other day it said, he would have been 100 or something like that, or what's he coming up on? What
He's
birthday?
20. He was born in like 26, 28.
Oh, okay. So
he was younger than Coretta.
Be like 90.
A little bit younger.
Like 90, yeah.
But he was just 39, as was Malcolm X, as was Medgar Evers. I think they were all 39 years old.
That was a good book too, the Malcolm X piece.
The autobiography of Malcolm X.
Yeah, I read that while I was in school. That was out then. Claude Brown, there was some of his
Claude
works.
Brown, yes.
Some of his books out.
In the Promised
Soul
Land.
on Ice.
Man-Child in the Promised
Man-Child
Land.
in the Promised
Soul
Land.
on Ice is Eldridge Cleaver, right?
Right, yeah.
And then Man-Child in the Promised Land
I read
is
all those in
Claude Brown.
I remember I was in Baltimore
Yeah.
when I was reading those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to sort of understand that whole period, there's literature, because I
Yeah.
noticed that a lot of people, they cannot live in those times.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I read. Those are good.